Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to another bone-chilling journey through the world of the unknown. If you're new here, make yourself comfortable, grab a warm drink, dim the lights, and prepare for a night of eerie tales and whispered legends. This channel is dedicated to exploring the most haunted places across the country, delving into the dark and mysterious histories that have left behind lingering presences. Tonight, we turn our attention to the Pacific Northwest, where mist-laden forests, forgotten towns, and crumbling ruins hide some of the most terrifying hauntings in the United States. Oregon, with its rugged coastline, dense evergreen forests, and sprawling mountain ranges, is a place of breathtaking beauty, but beneath its serene surface lies a darker history. From the bustling streets of Portland to the remote ghost towns of the high desert, this state is steeped in tales of the supernatural. Whether it's the ghostly figures that wander the halls of abandoned asylums, the eerie whispers that echo through forgotten tunnels, or the shadowy presences that lurk in the corners of historic hotels, Oregon is a land where the past refuses to stay buried. Tonight, we will be diving deep into the most notorious haunted locations in Oregon, uncovering the chilling stories behind each one. From the infamous Shanghai Tunnels of Portland, where the echoes of kidnapped souls still haunt the underground passages, to the cursed halls of the Timberline Lodge on Mount Hood, where a tragic death left behind an unshakable presence, each location has its own unique and spine-tingling history. We'll also explore the eerie corridors of the Oregon State Hospital in Salem, where the tortured spirits of former patients are said to still roam, and the haunted halls of the Baker Street Pub in Baker City, where the ghost of a World War II soldier is believed to linger. These are just a few of the many haunted places that make Oregon a state where the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. As we journey through these haunted landmarks, we'll hear first-hand accounts from those who have experienced the unexplainable, witnesses who claim to have seen apparitions, heard voices from beyond the grave, and felt the chilling presence of unseen forces. We'll also examine the historical events that may have given rise to these hauntings, from tragic deaths to unsolved mysteries, and explore whether there is any truth to the rumors that these places are truly cursed. So, if you're ready to step into the shadows of Oregon's most haunted locations and uncover the secrets hidden within their walls, press play and join us on this spine-chilling expedition. But be warned, once you enter this world of ghostly echoes and forgotten souls, you may never look at Oregon the same way again. The Shanghai Tunnels of Portland, a labyrinth of lost souls beneath the bustling streets of Portland, Oregon, lies a network of tunnels that has become synonymous with urban legend, historical tragedy, and chilling paranormal activity. Known as the Shanghai Tunnels, these underground passageways were originally built in the late 19th century to facilitate commerce and transportation in the rapidly growing port city. However, what began as a practical infrastructure soon became the site of one of the darkest chapters in Portland's history, the infamous practice of crimping, where unsuspecting men were kidnapped, drugged, and forced onto ships bound for distant ports, never to be seen again. Today, the tunnels remain a place of eerie fascination, with countless reports of ghostly figures, disembodied voices, and an overwhelming sense of dread that lingers in the air. The origins of the Shanghai Tunnels date back to the 1860s, when Portland was a thriving hub of trade and industry. As the city expanded, businesses and merchants sought ways to transport goods more efficiently, leading to the construction of underground passageways that connected storefronts, warehouses, and the Willamette River docks. These tunnels served a legitimate purpose at first, allowing goods to be moved without interference from the muddy, unpaved streets above. However, by the 1880s, the tunnels had taken on a far more sinister role in Portland's history. During this time, Portland was a major departure point for ships heading to Asia, South America, and other distant ports. The term, Shanghai, became synonymous with the practice of kidnapping men and forcing them into maritime labor, a process known as crimping. Saloons, boarding houses, and even police stations were allegedly complicit in these abductions, with victims lured in by promises of work or drugged with spiked drinks before being dragged into the tunnels. Once underground, they were held in small, windowless cells, often referred to as cribs, until they were loaded onto waiting ships. Many of these men never returned, their fates lost to the depths of the Pacific Ocean. The last recorded case of crimping occurred in 1941, but the tunnels themselves remained largely intact, hidden beneath the modern city above. In the decades that followed, the tunnels became a place of fascination for historians, paranormal investigators, and thrill-seekers alike. Though many sections have been sealed off for safety reasons, guided tours now offer visitors a glimpse into the eerie underground labyrinth, where the echoes of the past seem to whisper through the damp stone walls. For those who have ventured into the tunnels, the experience is often described as unsettling, to say the least. Tour guides and visitors alike report strange occurrences, cold spots that appear without warning, unexplained noises that seem to come from nowhere, and the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. Some claim to hear the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the tunnels, even when no one else is present. Others describe hearing muffled voices, as if distant conversations are taking place just out of earshot point. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the appearance of shadowy figures lurking in the tunnel's recesses. Witnesses describe seeing indistinct silhouettes moving along the walls, only to vanish when approached. Some claim to have seen the apparition of a man dressed in 19th century clothing, his face obscured by the darkness, standing motionless in the corner of a tunnel chamber. Others speak of a woman in a tattered dress wandering the corridors, her presence accompanied by the faint scent of lavender, an aroma associated with the boarding houses that once lined the streets above. Perhaps the most chilling account comes from a group of paranormal investigators who visited the tunnels in the early 2000s. Equipped with thermal cameras and audio recorders, they set out to document any unexplained phenomena. As they explored one of the deeper chambers, their equipment captured a sudden and inexplicable drop in temperature, accompanied by a sharp spike in electromagnetic activity. Then, one of the team members reported hearing a voice whispering his name, though no one else was present. When they played back the audio recordings later, they discovered something even more unsettling, a faint, distorted voice murmuring in a language none of them recognized, as if the very walls of the tunnels were trying to speak. Despite the passage of time, the Shanghai Tunnels remain a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. Whether these experiences are the result of residual energy, a lingering presence, or simply the power of suggestion, one thing is certain: those who descend into the tunnels may find themselves forever changed by the echoes of the past. The ghost of the Shanghai Tunnels, the tragic tale of Daniel Hines among the countless victims who vanished into the depths of the Shanghai Tunnels. One name stands out as a symbol of the horrors that once plagued Portland's underground labyrinth: Daniel Hines. His story, pieced together from historical records and local folklore, is one of deception, betrayal, and a fate that has left behind a lingering presence that many believe still haunts the tunnels today. Daniel Hines was a young sailor from San Francisco who arrived in Portland in 1887, seeking temporary work before catching a ship bound for China. He had heard stories of Portland's bustling port and the opportunities available for seamen willing to take on short-term labor. Upon his arrival, he was directed to a saloon near the docks, where he was promised a job loading cargo onto a vessel departing the following morning. Eager for work and unfamiliar with the city, Daniel accepted the offer and ordered a whiskey to celebrate his good fortune. What he did not know was that he had just become the next target of a crimping operation. The bartender, in collusion with local gangsters, slipped a powerful sedative into Daniel's drink, rendering him unconscious within minutes. When he awoke, he found himself in total darkness, his wrists bound with coarse rope. The air was damp and stale, the walls pressing in on all sides. He had been taken into the Shanghai Tunnels according to accounts from former crimps and police records from the era. Daniel was held in one of the small, windowless cribs beneath the city, where he was kept for several days alongside other kidnapped men. They were given little food and no information about their fate, their only hope being the distant sounds of movement above, the clatter of carriage wheels, the shouts of merchants, the occasional drunken laughter from the saloons above. Daniel, like the others, was told that if he resisted, he would never see the surface again. On the fourth day, the men were led through the tunnels to a waiting ship docked along the Willamette River. Some were beaten into submission, while others, like Daniel, were too weak to fight back. As the ship set sail, Daniel was given the choice: work as a deckhand or be thrown overboard. He chose to survive, enduring months of brutal labor aboard the vessel as it made its way to China. But survival came at a cost. When the ship finally reached its destination, Daniel was abandoned in a foreign port with no money and no means of returning home. He spent the next several years working odd jobs in Asia, desperate to find a way back to the United States. By the time he finally managed to return to Portland in 1901, the city had changed, and the crimping rings had begun to dissolve under increasing public scrutiny. Yet, despite his return, Daniel could not escape the trauma of his experience. He became a recluse, rarely leaving his small boarding house near the docks. Locals whispered that he had gone mad, that he spoke in his sleep of tunnels and shadows, of the cries of men who had never been seen again. Some claimed to see him wandering the streets at night, muttering to himself as though trying to piece together the fragments of his past. When Daniel died in 1913, his body was found in his room, his expression frozen in terror, his hands clawing at his throat as though he had been suffocated by unseen hands. There were no signs of struggle, no indication of foul play, but those who knew his story believed that the tunnels had finally claimed him. Since then, numerous reports have surfaced of a spectral figure resembling Daniel Hines roaming the Shanghai Tunnels. Witnesses describe a gaunt man in early 20th century clothing, his eyes filled with sorrow, his lips moving as if trying to speak but making no sound. Some claim he reaches out as if pleading for help, while others say he simply stares before vanishing into the darkness. One particularly harrowing encounter was reported by a tour guide who worked in the tunnels in the 1980s. She claimed that during a routine tour, she noticed a man standing at the far end of one of the larger chambers, his form barely visible in the dim lighting. Thinking he was a lost tourist, she called out to him, only for the figure to turn toward her, revealing a face twisted in anguish. Before she could react, the tunnel lights flickered violently, plunging the space into darkness. When the lights returned, the figure was gone, but the air was thick with the scent of salt and seawater, as though the ghosts of the past had momentarily returned. Whether Daniel Hines' spirit truly lingers in the tunnels or if his story has simply taken on a life of its own, one thing remains certain: the Shanghai Tunnels are more than just a relic of Portland's history. They are a place where the past refuses to be forgotten, where the echoes of lost souls still whisper through the stone walls, and where the line between history and legend blurs into something far more terrifying: the cursed walls of the Shanghai Tunnels, a legacy of suffering beyond the tragic fate of individual victims like Daniel Hines. The Shanghai Tunnels as a whole have become a place where suffering seems to have left an indelible mark. The sheer number of men who were taken, trapped, and forced into lives of servitude, or worse, vanished without a trace, has led many to believe that the tunnels have absorbed the anguish of those who suffered within their walls. This belief is not merely the product of folklore, it is reinforced by the countless eerie experiences reported by those who have explored the underground labyrinth. One of the most persistent phenomena associated with the tunnels is the sensation of being watched. Visitors and tour guides alike describe an overwhelming feeling of unease, as though unseen eyes are tracking their every movement. Some claim that the tunnels seem to close in on them, the air growing heavier the deeper they go, as if the very walls are pressing against them. Others speak of an oppressive weight settling over their chests, making it difficult to breathe, a sensation that dissipates only when they return to the surface. Another frequently reported occurrence is the sound of distant crying. Whether it is the muffled sobbing of a child or the anguished wails of a grown man, these sounds seem to drift through the tunnels without a clear source. Some visitors claim that the cries grow louder the further they venture into the underground corridors, while others insist that they can hear whispers in languages they do not recognize, perhaps the remnants of men from distant lands who were taken against their will. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the tunnels is the presence of cold spots, areas where the temperature drops drastically without warning. These cold pockets are often accompanied by an eerie silence, as if the very air has been drained of sound. Some believe these spots mark the locations where men were held captive in the cribs, their suffering leaving behind an imprint that lingers to this day. Others suggest that these areas are where the most violent acts occurred, where men were beaten into submission or where those who resisted were silenced forever. One particularly chilling account comes from a group of paranormal investigators who explored the tunnels in the early 2000s. As they set up their equipment in one of the deeper chambers, they noticed that their thermometers registered a sudden and inexplicable drop in temperature. plummeting from a mild 65 degrees to below freezing within minutes. At the same time, their audio recorders captured a series of faint, distorted voices, speaking in a language none of them recognized. When played back, the voices seemed to be pleading for help, their words garbled but unmistakably desperate. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the Shanghai Tunnels remain a place where the past refuses to be forgotten. Whether these experiences are the result of residual energy, a lingering presence, or simply the power of suggestion, one thing is certain: those who descend into the tunnels may find themselves forever changed by the echoes of the past. The phantom footsteps of the Shanghai Tunnels. Among the many eerie occurrences reported in the Shanghai Tunnels, none are as persistent or unsettling as the sound of phantom footsteps echoing through the underground corridors. Visitors, tour guides, and paranormal investigators alike have described hearing the distinct sound of someone walking just out of sight, footsteps that seem to follow them, stop when they stop, and vanish the moment they turn around. Unlike the distant cries or whispered voices that drift through the tunnels, these footsteps feel unnervingly close, as if someone is walking just behind them, yet no one is ever there. One of the earliest documented accounts of these phantom footsteps dates back to the 1930s, when a group of workers was hired to inspect the tunnels for structural damage. As they made their way through one of the deeper sections, they began to hear the unmistakable sound of someone walking behind them. Assuming it was another worker who had fallen behind, one of the men turned around, only to find the tunnel empty. The footsteps continued for several minutes before abruptly stopping, leaving behind only the sound of dripping water and their own labored breathing. The workers later admitted that they had all felt the same sensation, that they were not alone, that something, or someone, was watching them. The shadow figure of the Shanghai Tunnels, a presence that shouldn't be among the many eerie occurrences reported in the Shanghai Tunnels, none are as unsettling as the legend of the shadow figure. Unlike the more defined apparitions, such as the spectral sailor or the weeping woman, this entity manifests not as a recognizable ghost, but as a shifting, amorphous silhouette that seems to defy explanation. Witnesses describe a tall, slender figure, cloaked in darkness, its form blending seamlessly with the tunnel walls. It has no discernible features, no eyes, no face, no voice, yet its presence is felt with an almost suffocating intensity. Some claim to see it standing motionless in the distance, watching, waiting. Others report that it moves, gliding soundlessly through the tunnels, vanishing the moment it is noticed. The legend of the shadow figure has persisted for decades, with accounts dating back to the early 20th century. Some believe it is merely a trick of the light, a distortion caused by the interplay of shadows and mist that often lingers in the tunnels. Others, however, insist that it is something far more sinister, a presence that does not belong in the world of the living, yet refuses to cross into the afterlife. Whatever the truth may be, the stories surrounding this mysterious entity are enough to send chills down even the bravest of spines. One of the earliest recorded encounters with the shadow figure comes from a local historian who visited the tunnels in the 1940s to document their historical significance. As he wandered through the dimly lit corridors, he noticed an unusual figure standing near the entrance of one of the oldest passageways. At first, he assumed it was another visitor, perhaps a fellow researcher or a groundskeeper. But as he drew closer, he realized that the figure was not moving, not breathing, not reacting in any way to his presence. It simply stood there, its form blending into the darkness like a void against the stone walls. The whispering walls of the Shanghai Tunnels. Among the many unsettling experiences reported in the Shanghai Tunnels, one of the most frequently described phenomena is the sound of whispers, faint, unintelligible murmurs that seem to drift through the air without a source. Visitors, tour guides, and paranormal investigators alike have described hearing these whispers, often just on the edge of comprehension, as if someone is trying to speak but cannot be fully understood. Some claim that the whispers grow louder the further they venture into the tunnels, while others insist that they are always just out of reach, fading the moment they try to focus on them. One of the earliest documented accounts of these whispers dates back to the 1920s, when a group of workers was tasked with reinforcing the tunnel walls after a minor collapse. As they worked in one of the deeper sections, they began to hear the distinct sound of voices murmuring in the distance. At first, they assumed it was another group of workers in a nearby passage, but when they called out, there was no response. The whispers continued for several minutes before abruptly stopping, leaving behind only the sound of dripping water and their own uneasy breathing. The workers later admitted that they had all felt the same sensation, that they were not alone, that something, or someone, was trying to communicate with them. Since then, countless others have reported similar experiences. Some described the whispers as pleading, as if the voices belonged to lost souls begging for help. Others claimed the voices sound angry, filled with frustration or sorrow. One particularly harrowing encounter was described by a tour guide who had been leading visitors through the tunnels for years. On a particularly quiet evening, as the group descended into one of the older chambers, she suddenly heard the sound of a voice calling her name. Thinking it was one of the tourists, she turned around, only to find the tunnel empty. The voice did not call again, but she admitted that she had never felt such an overwhelming sense of unease in the tunnels before. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document these mysterious whispers, setting up audio equipment in various sections of the tunnels in hopes of capturing evidence. Some have recorded what they describe as unexplainable sounds, faint murmurs that seem to move through the tunnels without a source. Others claim to have captured recordings of multiple voices speaking at once, their words garbled but unmistakably desperate. Whether these sounds are the result of residual energy, a lingering presence, or simply the tricks of an ancient underground labyrinth, one thing remains certain: those who venture into the Shanghai Tunnels may find themselves forever haunted by the whispers of the past. The phantom music of the Shanghai Tunnels. Among the many eerie occurrences reported in the Shanghai Tunnels, one of the most perplexing is the phenomenon of phantom music, strange melodies that seem to drift through the underground corridors without a discernible source. Visitors, tour guides, and paranormal investigators alike have described hearing faint strains of music, sometimes resembling old sea shanties, other times echoing the mournful tones of a violin or piano. These spectral tunes appear unexpectedly, often in sections of the tunnels where no instruments or sound equipment are present, and vanish just as suddenly, leaving behind only an unsettling silence. One of the earliest documented accounts of this phenomenon dates back to the 1950s. When a group of maintenance workers was repairing a collapsed section of tunnel wall. As they worked late into the night, they began to hear the faint sound of a violin playing in the distance. The melody was slow and melancholic, seemingly coming from one of the deeper chambers. Thinking it was a homeless person seeking shelter, one of the workers called out, asking if anyone needed help. The music stopped instantly, as if the player had been startled. When they cautiously explored the area, they found no sign of an instrument or any physical presence, only the cold, damp stone walls that had stood for centuries. Since then, numerous others have reported similar experiences. Some describe hearing the sound of a piano playing itself in the distance, its notes drifting through the tunnels as if carried by an unseen breeze. Others speak of ghostly voices singing in hushed tones, their words just beyond comprehension. One particularly harrowing encounter was described by a tour guide who had been leading groups through the tunnels for years. On a quiet evening, as she and a small group of visitors made their way through one of the older corridors, they suddenly heard the unmistakable sound of a violin playing a slow, mournful tune. Thinking it was a fellow tourist with a hidden speaker, she called out, asking them to turn off the music. The melody stopped instantly, but when she turned around, there was no one behind them. The group, visibly shaken, quickly ended the tour and left the tunnels without looking back. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document these mysterious sounds, setting up audio equipment in various sections of the tunnels in hopes of capturing evidence. Some have recorded what they describe as unexplainable music, faint melodies that seem to move through the tunnels without a source. Others claim to have captured recordings of multiple instruments playing at once, their harmonies eerily synchronized despite the absence of any visible musicians. Whether these sounds are the result of residual energy, a lingering presence, or simply the tricks of an ancient underground labyrinth, one thing remains certain: those who venture into the Shanghai Tunnels may find themselves forever haunted by the melodies of the past. A final reflection on the echoes of the past. As we bring this journey through Oregon's most haunted places to a close, one thing remains abundantly clear. This state is more than just a land of breathtaking landscapes and rugged coastlines. It is a place where the past refuses to stay buried. From the eerie corridors of the Shanghai Tunnels, where the echoes of kidnapped souls still whisper through the stone walls, to the cursed halls of the Timberline Lodge, where a tragic death left behind an unshakable presence, each location tells a story that refuses to be forgotten. The Oregon State Hospital, with its tortured history and lingering spirits, and the haunted halls of the Baker Street Pub, where the ghost of a World War II soldier is believed to linger, only add to the rich tapestry of paranormal activity that defines this state. What makes these hauntings so compelling is not just their eerie nature, but the way they intertwine with the very fabric of history. These are not just tales of the supernatural. They are reminders of real lives, real tragedies, and real moments of human emotion that have left an indelible mark on the places they once called home. Whether you believe in the paranormal or not, there is something undeniably haunting about standing in a place where centuries of history have unfolded, where the weight of the past feels almost tangible. Oregon, with its mist-laden forests, forgotten towns, and crumbling ruins, is a land where the past lingers in ways that defy explanation. For those who dare to visit these locations, the experience is more than just a glimpse into the unknown, it is a journey into the heart of what makes history so captivating. The rustling of leaves in the wind, the flickering of shadows at dusk, the inexplicable chill that sometimes settles over the grounds, these are the moments that remind us of the mysteries that still linger in the world. And while we may never know the full truth behind these hauntings, perhaps that is what makes them so enduring. The unknown has always held a certain allure, a power to stir our imaginations and challenge our perceptions of reality. So, dear friends, as we part ways for now, I leave you with this thought. The next time you find yourself wandering through an old building, a forgotten tunnel, or a quiet courtyard, take a moment to listen, not just with your ears, but with your instincts. Who knows what stories may be waiting to be uncovered, what whispers of the past may still be carried on the wind. Whether you are a believer, a skeptic, or simply someone who enjoys a good ghost story, Oregon's haunted places serve as a reminder that history is never truly silent. It speaks in hushed tones, in flickering lights, in the lingering sense that you are not alone. If you enjoyed this journey through one of the most haunted states in the country, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever encountered something unexplainable in Oregon or another historic location? What other haunted places would you like to see explored in future episodes? Your curiosity fuels this channel, and I can't wait to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, sometimes the past isn't as far behind us as we think. Thank you for watching, and may your own journeys through history be filled with wonder, mystery, and just the right amount of eerie anticipation. Good night, and sweet dreams, if you dare.